Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first talk of the Asia Pacific Transitions Speaker Series hosted by the East-West Center Research Program. This speaker series focuses on the social, economic, ecological, and political processes shaping the Asia Pacific region. I am Sandeep, and I will be moderating this talk today. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Dr. Sisir Pradhan, technical expert, climate change at the Marine Tenure Facility. Dr. Pradhan is an academic practitioner working on issues related to sustainability management and transdisciplinary knowledge systems. He has over 26 years of professional experience working with nonprofits, government agencies, and international agencies on development issues embedded in complex human and environmental issues, environmental systems across South Asia and Africa. Recently, he has completed his PhD from the University of Waterloo. As it happens, Sisir was my boss in the initial days of my career and also one of my early mentors. Before I hand it over to Sisir, a quick reminder, please post your questions in the Q&A box and they will be conveyed to the speaker. Sisir, without further ado, it is over to you.
Thank you, Sandeep. Such a warm introduction. Welcome, everyone. Let me share my screen. So, is it visible?
Yes.
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name, as Sandeep said, my name is Sisir. I work on social-ecological systems, human environment systems. So I'll be talking about social-ecological system analysis about dried fish value chain, more particularly fish value chain, and with a reference to dried fish in Indian context. So in 1 minute, I'll get into the empirical basis of this study. However, this study is being undertaken with the support of Canadian Research Council and 3 projects, B2V, Vulnerability Viability Research Project housed in University of Waterloo, dried fish projects with managed by University of Manitoba. So my plan in next 40 minutes is talk about a little bit about the problem context, empirical context, and also introduce a novel theoretical framework, which we have came out of the research. Is called social-ecological system-oriented dried fish value chain. So I'll also try to discuss about how it looks at empirically when you test in the field in the context of Bay of Bengal. And at the end, I will take some time for discussing about some learnings that came out of the multi-country work, and also about the kind of approaching the research on value chain and more particularly on fisheries sector. Coming to this, the problem context, most of you might be very familiar with the concept of value chain. So, and especially in the domain of fisheries value chain, it follows a very narrow neoclassical commodity chain approach. By saying that, I'm saying that it focuses on a very utilitarian perspective where the ability to produce economic values is very important for any product. The ability to produce economic value is very important. Therefore, there is a bigger thrust on financial value that is actually transmitted and produced through exchanges between different nodes. So, however, these fisheries and natural resources, they don't really being governed or managed by communities and people across who depend on them based on only financial motivation. So it fails to factor the non-capital relationships that exist. That's about culture, that's about tradition, that's about intergenerational skills, everything. So it is driven mostly by the logic of profit, price, convenience, product quality, and those kind of aspects. So, and the narrow profit point perspective actually limits the understanding about the structure, conduct, function of the value chain. If you really take out any study or any value chain analysis, you will find these terms being used like value chain is organized, value chain is actually analyzed on the lens of its structure. Structure means the nodes, the actors, the agencies involved in it. Conduct means its behavior, functions, and performance means how do we really see that this value chain is viable or not viable. In that lens is more coming from a neoclassical economic lens, which talks about if there is aggregate revenue generation through the exchange of products at the aggregate value chain level, then it is viable. So performance is looked in the matrix of money and revenue flows. So that is when we look at these fisheries as a social-ecological construct, which has a lot of ecological nuances, it has a lot of social nuances, and those ecological and social processes shape the whole fisheries as a livelihood, fisheries as a systems over the period of time. Such a value chain understanding, which is supposed to be beneficial to the poor, provides a lack of understanding, comprehensive view for the upstream value chain actors, because when it is a revenue flow, the investors becomes very important, the finance becomes important, therefore the decision making and the whole ability, power in the market shifts towards the market players rather than the people. So that's the beginning point where we started to look at this entire process, how to really find an alternative way to appreciate such dynamics that is cropping in natural systems, dynamics is human systems, and how do we really look at the power of the people in the market. So this is, you can say, this is positioned and biased a little bit towards poor, and how the power of fishers and dried fish workers in the market can be improved with which kind of analysis, value chain analysis. So that's the whole idea of this entire research. And if you see, I just want to bring your attentions to this slide a little bit. If you see this, this research is done in the eastern coast of India and northern coast of Bay of Bengal, bordering Bangladesh and India. So if you find two eastern states, Odisha and West Bengal. So I have taken kind of 4-5 sites which are interacting with each other in the market, in the product, in processing. All there is strong interactions, and we have again taken around 10 criteria about selecting these areas. So criteria like fishing, criteria like vulnerability, criteria like many things. And if you see, there are also some ecological criteria has been taken up. The site one where you see this Paradip and this Kajalpatia, which is written here. So that's more near, it's in a proximity to a national park, global olive ridley protection sites, and also this part is also having a rich biodiversity, and it's a estuarine ecosystem. River Mahanadi is actually fitting into it. The other side is also same. So if we look at the contextual outlook, just to give an idea, West Bengal is the second and Odisha is the fourth fish producing state in India. However, while there is a impressive growth in last 10 years of the fisheries production, but the share of marine production is on decline because it's either more constant or declining. So even dried fish, if we say there are 16.45% of the marine fish production goes for dried fish, that's a large in number, considering a large country and considering the volume of production, a large quantity of production goes for drying, and dried fish is actually taken up by the poorest of the poor section of the poorest of the poor in the value chain. There has been steep rise in vessels. There is mechanized sector taking prominence like any other parts of the world, and there has been a lot of government policies and push towards motorization and mechanization. And however, irony is that still there are 47% of the people is on traditional sector. However, the share of their catch is about 17%, and the 6%, 7% of the more mechanized sector has a share about 49%. So you can say the distribution of kind of catch in terms of people engaged in different social economic strata. So if you see the fluctuation is quite high because of the uncertainties, because of the processes. I'll come to that. Then fishing ban, that's another big driver in this area. There's a place-based driver. So there are a lot of type of bans happens. I'll come to that when I'll talk about the well-being issue. So there are drivers for conservation, ban for conservation, monsoon ban for fisheries, breeding and everything. So as I said that in this pie, you can say that there is a steady decline in the share of marine fisheries. And also there is a very strong programmatic push towards aquaculture, mariculture, cage culture, just to meet the demand of the people. And one side, the consumption demand is increasing. Other side, the marine production is more or less constant. So governments are pushing for aquaculture, and aquaculture in turn having a very negative effect on aquaculture, mostly on candidate species like shrimps. If you say 74.75% of exports from Odisha is happening on shrimp, and the focus on candidate species actually bringing a lot more problems in the marine space because of the juvenile catch, because of the pollutions, because of the encroachment. So there are many things happening and that's also altering the whole fisheries system in this country, in this state, because this more focus on aquaculture, bringing in more mechanization, more investment, more capital intensive fishing, and that is posing a real problem to the capture fisheries in the state. So if I just to introduce a little bit about the value processes and value chain in case of dried fish business over here. So there are typically 6 processes involved in the value chain. And if you can see the map right side, you can see there is a fairly simple interactions that are happening at first 2 nodes, fishes and dried fish process. But after that, it's becoming very dense. The competition is becoming very, very strong, but the collaboration is also becoming very strong at that level. So there is this is a complex value chain where the fishers are just mere suppliers to the chain, and the whole activity, the moderation, the whole transactions becomes much more dense and much more kind of a informed at a lower end of the value chain, which is in the market segments. So there is primacy of the economic logic, as I said, price relationships. And if you go through in the kind of statistics, they get when it comes to consumers, it comes up to like 50 to 250 rupees, but the fishers only get about 10 to 40-50 rupees when they actually go for. And the irony is that in this area, most of these enterprises are household based enterprises. They have mixed identity. They are not only fishers, they are fishers, and they sell some live fish and they also process from dry fish. So these are mostly people who are engaged as a fishers. They are also processors in that sense. So there is a whole fuzzy boundary of nodes with mixed identities of actors. People are assuming a role of fishers, dried fish processors. Some of them are aggregators at the local level. So like that. So it is very difficult to really divide the kind of nodes and see. And therefore, what is happening, the bargaining power in the upper end value chain is very limited, and the bargaining power in the lower end of the value chain, where the market agents and actors are there, it is quite high because their exposure to different markets, exports and everything. So, and there is whole evidence of adjusted vertical integration of the value chain. Adjusted vertical integration of the value chain suggests that one or few value chain actors operating at the lower end of the value chain has greater control of the entire process, price, product, quality, flow, everything. So looking at this, we try to look at by drawing insights from three theoretical areas mostly. One is social ecological systems, the other one is coming from social well-being, and third one is value chain. Of course, we try to look at the entire dynamics, this whole product, process, and people dynamics in the value chain through a very novel, different outlook. So what we did is like we tried to develop a novel value chain concepts, analytical framework, which talks about which makes the resource as a critical node. Generally in value chain, fisheries resource is considered as an inbound logistics function, where that's the enabling environment. So, but we elevated that to a fisheries as a typical node. When you make the fisheries as a typical node, because of the logic is there is no fish, there is no dried fish, and these systems, why? Because this is dynamic. These fisheries also determine the implications on price, product, livelihoods, the way people interact, the relationships, everything which is critical elements of value chain interactions. These fisheries resource has a significant contribution and significant bearing on that. So it cannot be, you cannot just look at fisheries resources as a inbound logistics and make your value chain adjustments at different levels by expanding your bill of materials, by diversifying your business from dried fish to frozen fish to live fish to fish speckle to value-added fish. So many things is happening. So you are using the same product, but the fisheries resource itself gives a lot more importance. Therefore, fisheries has to consider as a prominent node. When you make the fisheries as a prominent node, so then the feedbacks, two-way feedbacks between fishery systems like ecological systems and human systems becomes extremely critical. This two-way feedback. And when this two-way feedback, you capture this two-way feedback, then the linkages has to be looked in, not between only actors. Linkages has to be mapped very dynamically between different nodes and within different nodes. So linkages are also, meaning of linkages becomes very different. And there are these lot of uncertainties coming up. And there is also with the social ecological systems due to feedbacks, uncertainties and everything. So systems goes to a new system of equilibrium and with lot unanticipated kind of changes. And that brings in appetite for new emergence and emergent properties. So we looked at this structure, conduct, performance of the value chain from a novel framework, wherein we are taking fisheries research as a critical node, and instead of analyzing from price, product, profit kind of a framework, we try to look at feedback, linkages, uncertainty, and emergence. In a minute, I'll try to look at how it plays out in the real life situations. So we tested this framework in, as I said, in the empirical context of Bay of Bengal. So wherever we said, whenever we wanted to, we try to map various variables, like 16 variables that is actually relevant both for social ecological system understanding and value chain. So what we said, nonlinear feedback is seen from the lens of intensification and diversification social relationship, which is strong bearing on product, price, structure, conduct kind of a relationship that exists within the value chain framework. We looked at dynamic linkages that dynamic linkers was examined with the kind of variables like roles, relationship, resources, roles of different actors, roles of different processes, and uncertainty. In generally business terms in value chain, we talk about risks. Therefore, the agencies go for risk management, and risk management strategies are quite different, where they want to try to minimize the risk by through financial apparatus, through management principles, through human resource principles. So, but here uncertainty, we want to embrace uncertainty because the fishery system is not a very controlled system. There are global changes happening. climate change is happening. There are changes happening in other sectors, like industrial growth is happening, blue economy is posing new, blue growth is posing, blue growth is posing new threats. A lot of aquaculture itself, fisheries sector, as I said, is actually challenging the existing dynamics within the fisheries sector. So there are many things cannot be controlled, unanticipated. So we looked at uncertainty should be the real pathway to understand this value chain. So where we looked at uncertainty from 4 perspectives: supply variability, demand variability, process uncertainty, and policy and control. I'll go each one of them. Then we looked at emergence and special features, place-based values, technology, and skill. Emergence means basically novel properties and innovations that actually makes the systems perform in a different operational loop. So as I said, if you say feedbacks, as I discussed, so there is a constant reduction of the kind of pressure in the marine system. So therefore, one side there is a that the whole vessels is increasing, other sides the production is constant or less, and then the share of mechanized sector is increasing day by day. So there is a whole reduction in catch per units efforts of these, mostly the traditional and artisanal sector people. Therefore, when there is a reduction in efforts, so there are also people want to survive in the system. So there is whole push towards extractive fishing by local extractive fishing by the motorized sector and by the mechanized sector. They use trawl net, they do bull trawling, all sorts of practice which is not sometimes legal, sometimes illegal, to get more and more from the seabed. And also the kind of aquaculture, they need spawns, they need juvenile species, juvenile catch. So that's why the nets, the systems, the technology they use are quite extractive in nature, and that is creating a big pressure on the system itself. One, the system is creating pressure on the livelihood, and livelihood again, it's a kind of vicious cycle. So there is an expanded bills of materials. As I said, materials now, the 30% to 50% catch is going to fish meal and feed mill, poultry feed. So when these sectors are growing, the demand for fish meal is increasing, and therefore this whole entire pelagic fishes, the small pelagic fishes that get catch in the sea, is going to those industries. And at the same time, there is a whole export kind of push towards frozen fish, live fish. Technology is increasing and improving, and value-added fish. So that is actually creating a big pressure on the sectors like traditional dried fish sectors. Then there is a whole external drivers, if I can say. So there is industrialization, aquaculture, prolonged fishing ban, as I discussed already, is on the face, and people are facing a lot more challenges, and that is creating again a big issue. Like when there is a ban for 7 months and there are only 4 months or 5 months are open, so people want to do as much as they can do. So that's the problem of people actually going for extractive fishing. And second is, when there is a fishing ban, only ban for 20 kilometers, there are 3 types of bans. One ban is about a monsoon ban, which is banned for everyone. Only artisanal fishers are allowed. No mechanized boats are allowed in the exclusive economic zone. However, for this place is actually known for olive ridley breeding. Therefore, the ban period is from November to May, and during that period, artisanal people are not allowed into the sea. Mostly with motors, up to 10 kilometers, and then mechanized sectors, people are not allowed up to 20 kilometers from the coastline. However, all mechanized and high motorized fishers, they do in deep sea fishing beyond 20 kilometers, but these people are not able to do it. So that is creating a lot more social dynamics in terms of labor relationships, in terms of livelihoods, relationship. So many changes happening in that space. So there is also change in traditional boundary of geographic specification. That's what earlier what is happening. There are places where people used to know that this species get caught here, this species get caught here. So they have the traditional geographic arrangements in terms of agents, in terms of people, in terms of fishers, and they have associated relationship of credit, relationship sourcing. So there are many relationships that exist in that sense. But now with the kind of climate change, with the kind of these external pressures, this whole species catch becoming very unpredictable in the sea space, and that is creating new dynamics, bringing in new dynamics with the traditional geographic separation. Also the technologies are helping, like now people can transport fish from one place to another very quickly through improved technology, with ice box available, everything available, ice container available. So now this geographic advantage of species advantage is also blurring. Therefore, whole market and market dynamics around the how the fishers and market interactions happens, that is also changing very fast. The dynamizing livelihoods also changing. And if you say linkages, we have seen linkages in like three lanes, roles and relationship. As I said, there are fuzzy boundaries, there is mixed identity. So you just cannot differentiate. This is a fisher, this is a dried fish processor, this is an agent, this is an, and then you moderate your whole entire market transactions and revenue flows accordingly. So that makes it more complex. This is a very complex scenario in terms of roles and relationships. And therefore, that is also having complex trade links. And with the kind of policy and push, that is becoming very important, because the trade policy has implications, the tax policies has implications. So I don't have time to talk about everything, but India has a signatory to SAFTA, South Asian agreements, and where India can export with zero duty on, then there is, and this whole processing units, they are operating at a very lower level, like 30% of their efficiency level. Therefore, they are able to source a lot of fish from Bangladesh, from Thailand, and these fishers and small processors who are working in India are not able to get that competitive price and market. So there are many things happening in terms of changing roles and relationships. Rules are, as I said, rules are also changing in terms of international rules, domestic rules. There is focus towards aquaculture. There is whole focus towards even positive part is towards women and women enterprises. So access to credit, everything is happening. So that is also changing the whole dynamics in the sector. There are also sets, as you know, fisheries is the most talked about subject in terms about the tradition, culture, the whole a lot of informal roles that is based on indigenous traditional knowledge, and at the same time, these rules are also being formed with the kind of change to cope with the change. Like now people are more eager to say at the labor and cost, because the labor cost is increasing. So they come together, like 2-3 families come together, have joint boats and joint labors, and they operate in that to share that burden. Women have started venturing into the sea, which was not happening earlier. Now, because the labor cost is going high, and there is a low catch, there are unpredictability. So people are like families, like both husband and wife, they are venturing into the sea and on a day trips, not long, more than those long trips, women generally don't go. Whoever catch in the near shore areas, so they are also going. So there are commission agents are becoming very dynamic now. Earlier, commission agents are like very fixed in any area. Now, since the market is getting blurred, people from West Bengal procuring from Odisha, people from Andhra procuring from Odisha, again people from Odisha procuring from West Bengal. So that is changing in that sense. And in terms of uncertainty, as I said, this region, you can see the kind of map in the left side. So there is whole lot of episodic events, climate events this area face. And there is a whole increase in intensity of the of the cyclonic and low pressure and those kind of thing. And if you say CVI index is about 4.5 to 9.5, which is quite high in Bay of Bengal. So that is resulting in reduction of the fishing days. At the same time, also making the fisheries infrastructure quite vulnerable. At the same time, people are losing a lot of livelihoods, and it is creating big pressure, like in type of dried fish that requires some infrastructure on the coast. And every time there is a cyclone, that infrastructure is lost. And most of them are not very formal kind of registered enterprises. So they don't even get compensation. So for them to have that investment again is a big deal. So they shift to live fishing, they shift to many other opportunities to cope with that. And that is bringing new dynamism into the uncertainties, bringing new dynamism into the whole value chain and value processes in the region. There is also evidence of habitat shift. You must have said there is a whole biogenic changes happening in the sea. A lot of, because of here we found that Indian mackerel is a species which is actually moving northwards. Earlier it was plentifully available in Odisha coast. Now that is not available anymore. It is more available in West Bengal, in North Bengal coast. So this kind of shifts also changing the dynamics of the market, dynamics of the technology, dynamics of the fishing technique people are having. So that is generally in value chain, doesn't it? Economic value chain, we are not capturing these. And with the kind of uncertainty, if we map, those becomes very critical in shaping the value chain behavior and value chain performances in an area. So, and there is also a whole push towards expanding live fish market, new markets for selected species. As I said, 74% of export revenue comes from shrimps. So like that. So, and government policies as more towards aquaculture, more towards export, more towards giving incentives to market. So that is creating also quite of imbalance in the value chain towards this operant value chain actors like fishes and dried fish vessels. As I said, emergence is a novel property. In value chain, we generally do not appreciate emergence because that brings risk. But in social ecological and oriented dried fish value chain, we are saying emergence is a risk as well as is an opportunity. So with the kind of emergent properties arise out of continuous interactions between people and ecosystems they are living, and these are novel properties which actually shifts the systems to a new level of equilibrium. So there is not only one equilibrium, there could be multiple equilibrium that can come. So as you said, there are whole lots of drivers that are impacting on fisheries and fishers, and at the same time people are also trying to bring in a lot of changes into their adjustments into their systems, and new things are emerging, like fishing practices are changing. Like now subgroup collaborations, like the trawler groups, they're collaborating and they're also having market in the sea. At the same time, these fishers and small processors, they're also getting federated and they're trying to negotiate with the larger groups for the benefits with the government as well. So there is also conflict happening at that level. As I have already explained about the geographic separation is getting blurred. With that, the whole mobility of product, mobility of people, mobility of resources is also changing, and that is also adding to cost. At the same time, the accessibility is also increasing. It has both positive and negative. And then market specialization is happening now with the kind of expanding BOM, expanding market structure. People are specializing on specific segments like frozen fish, dried fish, value-added fish, also poultry, fish meal. So there are changing, and at the same time, labor relationship is changing. Like people who are actually thrown out of the job because of the low catch, because of the low long-term fishing ban, they are joining now into more mechanized sector. They are joining into these places. So and they're also going for casual labor activities with the kind of industrial and urban processes are sprawling. So there are many changes happening at that positive and negative both the systems. In case of place-based, if you see this Kajalpatia village, I said that village is a resettled village after in that place where most of the people migrated from Bangladesh have been settled there during the India-Bangladesh war and previously also. In spite of low catch, they are now bringing more people from their own ethnic groups to have a better kind of a bigger number so that they can have a more political voice and they can also bargain with the local people. So that's why the social capital becoming very, very important with the kind of vulnerability also increasing. And that is giving them more solace and more kind of a space in decision making. There is also intra-community cooperation is happening because the cost is increasing. Catch is in a vulnerable. They need more investment for better technology. So now they are also pulling resources in terms of labor, people, cost, everything, and trying to cope up with the situations. As I said, there is strong labor and product mobility because of the broad geographic division, because of the sector is changing. There is also strong use of information, indigenous traditional knowledge. So here there is a process called Uthiya and Padiya. Uthiya means during the lunar cycle, what happens when there is a blue moon time, 5 days before and 5 days after the blue moon time, there is a heavy catch in the sea. And therefore, people don't want to migrate during that time. They want to invest in fishing during that time, and the rest period they want to migrate into the nearby cities for such a labor work. So in that sense, they are also adjusting their job calendar and everything using the whole traditional knowledge about how to do. And also they are also trying to have some traditional knowledge about their health, their everything they are using in that space. And as I said, women are with a greater focus on women and women-based agencies, finances, credit flows. So women are actually assuming greater role in the value chain. However, in the entire value chain, as I said, if you analyze their role, it's still marginalized. As I said, there are a lot of change in technology side. The third piece what I wanted to bring in about is about how do we really look at the performance of the value chain. So as I discussed about the structure and conduct part of the value chain, the performance of the value chain is basically looked into money metrics, revenue flows. However, if you just shift the lens to understand the value chain using a social ecological well-being framework, so the whole basket just opens up, and you try to think about this fisheries sector is not only people not only engage in fisheries sector because of money. They have definitely because of material well-being. They have also subjective well-being. They have also ecological well-being because people want to appreciate their natural cup. People want to take pride out of the kind of people they live with the nature. So they are operating at very different scales, and scale dimensions, ecological scale dimensions are very also critical to shape their life and livelihoods. It's also very relational. So they want to live in community, they have a caste identity, they have every identity, relationship, everything. So we try to look at this whole performance in a social ecological roles and try to answer the question who owns, who gets, what they do. Those kind of important questions becomes very important than also how much gained and what gained out of this entire thing. And you can see people consider it as a rice pot. Rice pot means rice is a staple food here. They said C is not just an income source, it's just a food bowl for all of us. That talks a volume. I said there is a material income. So they say income that they get income from the fisheries, they get multi-dimensional narrative of food and nutrition. If we see, we analyze the nutritional properties of the Dried fish, they get, and all the fish are having high nutrition, and they look at nutrition from by selling the fish, get income, get food. Also, they get nutrition from by direct consumption of the dried fish and fish. Also, they get also intergenerational kind of equity by investing in education, health, and everything. So there is a reduced CPE and the relationship dimensions. If you say there are like few relational dimensions that is exist, which we have tried to explore, and that is very, very important, and people give high priority to those between communities, between board and crew members, mechanized vessels, commission agents, traders. They have very positive relationship and negative relationship both. So value is influenced by social ecological interactions over the years, the fellow communities. So, and then if you see these two value chain approaches, there is quite a shift in understanding the value chain and in favor of the local communities. Conventional value chain structure talks about biophysical research, linear feedbacks, upstream actors are passive contributors, whereas SES, this social ecological system analysis provides for biophysical resources a critical node. There is nonlinear feedbacks, interactions across the levels and scale, and equal importance to horizontal actors. Fisheries and dried fish processes are active collaborators here. Similarly, conducts, if you say conduct here, behavior, value chain behavior is managed by logic, market logic. There is weak connections of social justice, social well-being, because it talks about utilitarian perspective. There is value chain efficiency is determined by aggregate value chain profits across nodes, and techno-managerial importance is much more here, but it's little different. It is a system logic. People really value social, economic, ecological processes themselves. There is a greater consideration of resource and human connections. There is a performance is critical within and among subsystems. So you are not looking at the performance as an aggregate system, rather disintegrated and distributed justice. Similarly. So what we think is that while value chain is a very interesting and important concept and has done wonders in sector, and bringing this social ecological framework, it provides very strong inroads into grounded into place-based issues and challenges. There is also a need to respect the multidisciplinary experiences of the people who are living with the system and with the nature. So they provide a lot more importance to the lot more new dynamism and lot more new insights to how one has to really look at this entire process, sustainability, and the market processes in and around the people and nature. There has to be also, like I said, it cannot be done through any other processes other than the transdisciplinary pathways, where people has to contribute to the building of knowledge systems. The people who suffer, who goes through the changes, they have to actually contribute to the knowledge building process, where interdisciplinary processes as well as the community processes come together. So getting a systems view rather than a transactional perspective. So value chain talks about profit, price, product, those kind of 4 Ps, 7 Ps, but systems view gives opens up a wide array of things that is very critical to understand the sustainability dynamics and change dynamics in a particular social ecological system. It is for us, it was very important to think research for what, for whom. Are we really talking up for the resource and human connections, or we are looking at for a particular, it's a market research that might have very different orientation. And we need to also look at how does this work challenge the present discourse of knowledge in terms of how we can add value by bringing in very practical as well as practical orientation, having theoretical sound understanding, and it has to be relevant to time and scale. Thank you very much. And these are my papers. You can see whatever I said, you can get in all these papers. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Shishir, for that lovely talk. I'm going to start with questions in the chat box. So first is, to what degree do you think dried fish are contributing to nutritional security of fishing communities? And do you feel this is changing, over time, I'm assuming, and how climate change is impacting nutritional security?
Yeah, it's a great question, Sandeep. As I said, there are about 15% of the coastal fish catch is going for dried fish, and 6% of the entire fish catch is going for fishing, dried fish. In that sense, by saying that, it talks about a volume that the consumption level is quite moderate, though it is changing, but it is quite moderate. And the new markets are opening up with the new technologies. And the nutritional value of these fish is quite significant. And we have done 14 species nutritional analysis for the lipid, fat, and the kind of other nutritional properties. It gives very impressive nutritional content. And if you see these coastal people, during the stress period, mainly it is used as a stress food. During the stress period, like cyclones, like low catch period, like ban period, they mostly prefer rice and dried fish at many here. And countries like Bangladesh, Thailand, Myanmar, those countries like South Asian countries, Sri Lanka, the consumption is really, really high, because it is one of their part of their daily delicacies, and this contributes a lot of nutritional security of these people. Climate change, yes, climate change is impacting, in the sense there is whole change in fishing habitats happening, and in that sense, there are two ways it is posing the problem. One is, in most of the places, the markets of the dried fish is mostly local markets. So they catch, they process and sell in local areas, since it is done by very poor fishers. Now with the kind of climate problems are happening, so and local catch is becoming very unpredictable of different species. So people have to depend on the market, because market processes have become much stronger with the kind of local market is getting disturbed. And that is very expensive at some times, because now there is a whole push towards sustainability, eco-labeling, and all those things, hygienic processing. That is good. That is good for human health. That is good for everything. But that's also bringing in people who have power, and that is bringing more investment in that space. And so that price relationship is changing. The poor are not able to afford those. So that has a negative implication on their purchasing power. At the same time, this whole hygienic product is moving to different level. Now you can see e-market on the Amazon, everywhere, where since the order is less, since people are actually getting hygienic food. So middle segment people are also going for dried fish, since it's in the pallets. In Kerala, in Odisha, the consumption at a middle segment, middle income segment, lower middle income segment is going, which is not there. So I think it's a kind of a very complex situation at the moment. While there is like, for example, Thailand anchovy is becoming a global product now. Everywhere you'll find Thailand anchovy. The kind of processing it is happening. So, but anchovy was very popular in India a few years ago, but people are saying anchovy population is going down because its movement is going towards northwards. So there are a lot of studies has to be done. I think there is a very complex scenario that is emerging out of the changing fish habitats, changing processes, changing market situations, and changing social-ecological construct of the fisheries.
Thanks, Shishir. Next question is by Sumit. He says, fascinating talk. What has been your experience in quantifying your models? This is a methodology related question.
Yes, now we are working on that. first we explored the, the value chain. Second, we did kind of a quantification. I didn't so much about the quantification data, quantified data here. We followed kind of a mixed method in this research where we used descriptive statistics to quantify the results in most of the results. In that, I think what we got into like many things like relationships, like subjective well-being. Those are narratives, and narratives built in people's reasoning, you know, and that might vary. That varies from place to place, from people to people. How do they perceive the things? And that is very important to capture. And those people's reasoning and narratives, we try to carry through qualitative research, mostly qualitative research, so that we can justify the whole transdisciplinarity perspective to this whole research. However, there are certain data like nutrition, like production, like market changes. Those data has been really analyzed using the quantitative information, and then we try to make reasoning by drawing inferences, combining both qualitative and quantitative information, and also waiting through secondary data about the export data, about the export policies, and those kind of stuff. So this is an ongoing research, and this will continue. But yes, we are looking at that dimensions quite strongly, piece by piece.
Great. Carolina is asking if you could expand on the role women play in the value chain and how these roles have changed. And she also asks if there have been any invisible roles that women have been playing.
It's a great question. Historically, women plays a greater role in the value chain, though it is not recognized, because value chain is always, I said, recognize the money metrics more, financial revenue more. You say only fish is caught by men in the sea. The rest of things are done by women. So in that sense, once fish lands on the landing site, after that, all control is taken over by women. They do processing, they do sorting, grading, drying, and also a little bit of selling at their household level. If the agents are coming, they're selling. But now their role is increasing in the sense because the labor dynamics is changing. Now women are also venturing into the sea in many places, we have seen, which was not about 5 years ago. Now women are also going in the boat with their partners, with their husbands into the sea for fish catch. They are also engaged themselves with the processing. They are also heavily into trading because, as you know, there is a greater push of the financial inclusion through World Bank, through other institutions where women agencies are given priority. So they have easy access to finance than men in many places. So that is also, though there is not much change in their household role, gender roles, but in terms of marketplace, they are becoming more vocal. They are able to do, and the kind of now with the motorcycle, with the this, so these guys are all few young girls are also taking greater financial and mobility roles into the market systems. So that is encouraging at one level. But this, but if you there is need to be, I have not done that analysis. One has to do that analysis, how much work burden is increasing because of this entire change is happening, and what social dynamics is coming. Social dynamic, another social dynamics, we got it, but we need to test it more. One is that now women are no more interested. These fisher women are no more interested to marry fishermen because they are a little more educated. They're not outgoing, so they're getting exposed to different type of people. So inter-community marriage is happening. So in that sense, many young guys in the fishing sector are also, it's not conclusive, it is indicative. Many people have said this, are shifting to jobs in the fishing sector rather than doing own fishing in a artisanal sector. So those kind of changes are happening with the kind of role of women is changing. Its gender role is actually it's still in a flux. I think the changes is happening at the moment.
Great. So what do you think are the short and medium term intervention to address this livelihood shock for fishing communities in coastal regions?
That's a first question is identity question, Sandeep. So most of the fishers has identity issues. You see, fishing in many parts is a caste-based operation, So in India, at least, so there are fishers caste who have their specific identity, their specific geography, and they do. But there are many who have joined fishing because of the need, who are living in the coasts. They don't have a caste identity. In that sense, sometimes they are not considered as fishers. That is first thing. That has to be resolved. Like Bangladesh people who settled in Odisha, like West Bengal people settled in Odisha are doing it. So that is making them socio-politically very vulnerable. And it happens in across many coasts with the sea level rising, with the displacement happening across the coast in Bangladesh, India, and everywhere. So this phenomena is going to, migration phenomena is going to be very, very strong. So one has to resolve those identity issues and tenure issues very critically. So people need to have tenure over their marine space. Even though they migrate, they are not migrating without nothing. They are migrating with kind of a human rights obligations of the state, and people are able to go through, get the justice from the system. That's the first issue, tenure and identity. The second major, I think, issue coming is basically on the kind of credit and technology side. If you see, this fishing technology is more towards whole blue economy investments. Now you can see it's more towards mechanization, more towards safety, more towards that. What about the artisanal sector? And the artisanal sector is the most neglected sector in this whole space. And their interest has to be protected, and protected through policy and law. And if you say the governance space is also becoming very problematic, because now the investors are actually looked at as fishers because they have a boat, they have a mechanized vessels. So they are also considered as a fishers, but they're not never been a fishers. And they occupy the political space in terms of federations, in terms of cooperatives, which is actually manage the resources and also influence the policies. So the real fishers are actually out of the entire governance scene, and those kind of spaces has to be secured for the artisanal and traditional fishing sector people. Fourth piece I'll come in, second. Third piece is that basically uncertainty and financing instruments like insurances. You need to have special state interventions in terms of, because these people are hit by all sorts of climate change adversaries like cyclones, depressions, sea level rise, everything. So you need to bring in financial and legal instruments to safeguard these people's life and livelihoods. Very, very importantly. And the last one is to also kind of incentivize these people to take up economic enterprises like solar drying systems, facilities. All those incentives has to flow into this group, these artisanal fishers, so that they can also catch up with the new markets, new market systems. But they don't have ability to invest. State has to jump into that to make their life good and good. So this could be many threats. This could be few for the time.
Last question. Could you share your most memorable experience of talking to the fishing communities?
There are many. I'm staying with them. I'm living with them since last 5 years. So every day is a very interesting experience. I can say one experience like COVID. This research also done within COVID time, and many of these young men and women from this fishing community, they migrated to different places like cities for construction worker. And you have heard that story of the people working back from Bangalore to Odisha to many kilometers and miles. I saw a few couples. They just came back from Goa with lot of struggle, and they started again taking up uh, building small canoes, small boats, and then going into the sea. I just asked, why you want a small canoe? You know that there is not much fish available. That that girl said, that man said, dying in your own space and own right is much better in dying in other space and others' right. So that gives. He said, fishing is our. We know fishing. We are proud of fishing. Fishing is our identity. This shock has made us realize we can only do fishing and fishing better, and fishing can survive. We can survive with the fishing, even though we'll have a very, very, I think, problematic time often. So we'll live in with this. So that gives me volume of kind of people doesn't look at this as a source of income. They look at source of identity. They also look at like it's a coping mechanism in their life and livelihood, because they know that skill and they're proud of that skill. So that's a very memorable kind of interactions. How do people associate with the resource and resource systems rather than only looking at, even though they have gone through a lot.
Well, thank you, Shishir, and my apologies to those whose questions could not be asked today. Thanks for that wonderful talk, and thank you everybody for taking a time out and participating in the first Asia Pacific Transitions Speaker Series talk. I would also like to express my gratitude to Catherine Murata Takako and Caroline Iguchi for helping us in putting together this show. Please remember, next week, we are going to have Dr. Charles, on May 3rd, we're going to have Dr. Charles Ham from National Disaster Preparedness and Training Center at the University of Hawaii coming and delivering a talk. So I would encourage as many of you as possible to register for the same. It's a hybrid talk. Thanks one and all. It was wonderful to have all of you. Good afternoon. Bye-bye.